We are live.
And welcome into Gator Bytes on the 1010XL.com podcast network, also being simulcast on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page. Today's Gator podcast is brought to you by our friends at Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. For the highest quality care, you can rely on Southeast Orthopedic Specialists for any orthopedic injury or concern. Be sure to check out their website, se-ortho.com. He is Graham Marsh. I'm the hacker Ryan Green. You are Florida Gator fans, and you are fans of the number two ranked team in America on the hardwood, a team that is 23-3, a team that is now 10-3 in the Southeastern Conference. And Graham, since the last time we talked, a team that absolutely demolished a couple of teams in South Carolina and Oklahoma. I believe that's 12 wins for Florida now by, is it 15 or more points? I mean, it is just wild how well the Gators are playing.
I think we're the best team in the country,
Well, I mean, look, they're
personally.
number two, and they went into Auburn's house, who's number one, and beat them. So that's certainly a fair argument.
They spanked them.
Yeah.
They dominated Auburn in that game. That was never really a game after halftime, right?
Without Elijah Martin.
Right. Exactly. This team has we talked about this briefly in the last couple episodes that we have talked that it's come to fruition even more so now. So Hack, I think what happened with this team, they were not bad. I'm gonna open up the comments here so I can see stuff. Sean says, "Good morning, fellas." Sean, good morning. How are you? We are we got to about a 7 with this team in terms of I feel like what their ceiling can be. And then they got a couple of injuries which forced them to go a little bit deeper in their bench and give guys that were playing on the bench even more minutes and give them a more significant role. And now all of a sudden they're the deepest team in the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the one thing we did talk about maybe a month or so ago, my one concern I did have, even though they were playing well, is I thought that they weren't quite deep enough across the board for maybe in a March Madness game where maybe one of your best guys gets a foul trouble, maybe one of your guys turns an ankle, maybe one of your guys just doesn't play quite as well. And I was worried that Florida didn't have enough people behind their starters and their main guys that contribute, because obviously Thomas Hawk's not a starter, but he contributes like one. I was worried about what that next layer of guy would look like to help them get it done. Now they're the deepest team in the country, Hack.
Well, the crazy thing about it is you cannot make trades in college basketball like you can in the NBA to get deeper. But it seems like that's kind of what happened with Florida with Micah Hanlockton. That's what it feels like. I mean, here's a guy that was your starting center last year, a guy that was one of the best offensive rebounders in the conference last year, and a guy that has been absolutely phenomenal. And now he comes in healthy off the leg injury and has been absolutely superb for the Florida Gators to this point. I think we might have lost Graham, but certainly, I mean, you look at Florida right now, and like Graham said, you talk about the deepest team in America. All right, let's think about this for a second. You got five legit guards, right? Graham's back. You got five legit guards. You got Walter Clayton. You got Will Richard. You got Elijah Martin. Look, Denzel Aberdeen and Thomas Houck are both two of the best bench players, not in the conference, but I would say in America. Klobuchar comes in, and all he's done is go like 9 of 14 from 3 point range. And Graham, like I was talking about, you add Hand Lockton to Thomas Houck to Ruben Chinyalu. Look, Sam Alexis and Alex Condon aren't even healthy right now, and it hasn't even mattered. Condon's going to come back sooner rather than later. Alexis's ankle, I think, is a little bit worse than Condon's, but I wonder where even minutes are going to come for Sam Alexis at this point because of, like you said, when they're fully healthy, they got a 10-man rotation that's as deep as any team in the country.
I don't know, no disrespect to him, but I don't know how Sam Alexis is going to see the floor when he gets back.
I agree.
I mean, they're what is it? They're 4 deep now, basically at big. Ruben Chinyalu, Thomas Houck, Han Lockton. Who am I missing at big?
Condon when he gets healthy.
And healthy Condon, correct? Yeah, sorry, I was thinking about the current. You're right. So obviously healthy Condon will start. Yeah, I mean, well, your fifth big is gonna play is gonna play significant minutes?
Well,
Probably
it's
not,
it's a
unless somebody gets in
huge
foul trouble or injured. I don't,
Yeah, I mean it's a huge benefit to have Sam Alexis. I'm certainly like but what I've been told is, and I don't know if you've heard any different, which is weird. The Condon injury looked really bad. Alexis also got hurt in the Mississippi State game, but actually finished the game. Yet I've talked to people down in Gainesville. Apparently, Alexis's ankle is considered a little worse than Condon's. Alexis may not come
yeah,
back till the end of the regular season, where Alex Condon may come back in the next week or so.
they this was my opinion hack watching that Mississippi State game. The broadcast made Condon's injury a lot more dramatic than it was, like a lot more. They said so he and I know he kind of spun around and it looked a little funky, but the broadcast said at one point while he was down on the court getting up and about to walk off into the locker room, the broadcast said, "Boy, this is eerily similar of Micah Hand-Lockton's injury last year."
Oh
Like
yeah,
what?
yeah.
Micah Hand-Lockton snapped his leg. What are we talking about? And it's an ankle sprain. People sprain their ankles in basketball all the time.
I do think Florida though dodged a bullet. I mean, like right when it happened, I thought, oh no, I thought minimum a high ankle. I would have taken a high ankle every day of the week. I would have said, 2 to 4 weeks, and I'll be happy. I do think Florida did dodge a bullet because it looked nasty at first, but the more you watched it, the more you realized it might not have been as bad as it initially looked.
Yeah, I just think they're being dramatic on it, but whatever. Condon's going to be back in at this point. Todd Golden said 10 to 14 days about 5 days ago. So at this point, you're looking at another week ish, give or take. If I had to guess, he probably misses two more games.
Hmm.
Most likely, he's going to miss the game tomorrow and probably miss Tuesday. And then at that point, it's probably kind of any time now that he'll be back. But kind of to the original point we were talking about, Hack. I mean, even when Walter Clayton turned his ankle and missed the one game like that, Walter Clayton turning his ankle is what got Urban Klobzar in the rotation.
Yeah.
That's what got it. He wasn't playing at all before that. He was a bench guy that didn't see the court unless they were up 40.
Well, one of the things that I love about Todd Golden, and I've made mention of this on Hacker After Dark all week, so I think it deserves mention. It's not just the portal. It's not just high school recruiting. It's not just international recruiting. It's all three. Golden's hit them all. Golden obviously has done very well in the portal. Golden has done pretty good in high school. And Golden has found guys internationally, Condon, Klobuchar, that have come in and made a huge impact. So when you're doing all three levels of that, high school, international, and the portal, you see the result 23-3 and number two in America.
And the development too, Hack. I think the development piece is really important to mention because these guys, some of these guys that Todd Golden has brought in have been hits and they've been obvious hits right away. Like last year, he's gotten even better, and I think he's put all the point guard questions that we had to bed weeks ago now. But like last year, like Walter Clayton Jr., like immediately, like that was a hit, and you could tell. Like he was hitting shots, he was smooth. Like this dude was a natural scorer. Like from day one on campus, you're like, all right, this guy's going to be a player. I don't know if we knew he'd be this good, but we knew he was going to be a player, right? I think Alex Condon kind of burst on the scene once he got playing time and started getting on the court. You could tell he was going to be a player. Some of those guys have been good right away. Um, but you think about Urban Klobzar. Like, again, a month ago, this dude's barely cracking the rotation, and now he's a pretty important piece for them offensively. I think Chinyalu's touch around the rim and his offensive skill set has gotten substantially better since the year tipped off. I think at the
Yeah.
beginning of the year with Chinyalu, it was I think the thought process with the two bigs was okay, Condon's going to give you the offense, and then Chinyalu is going to be your toughness, rebounds, hustle plays, and he gives you all that, and he still does. But when Chinyalu now goes at the rim by himself and backs somebody down, I have pretty high confidence he's going to put up a high percentage look and get it down. And when he gets fouled, I have a high percentage of confidence he's going to make his free throws. His offensive skill is very underrated, and I think that's because it's been developed this year. He's got stuff in his bag now I don't think he had in October and November. And that's kind of been translating amongst the entire team. And I think that's you can't win a national championship, you can't be a Final Four type of competitive team if you don't develop and get better throughout the season. And that's exactly what they're doing.
Well, I mean, think about it like this. All right, let's either put them in the SEC or put them in another Power Four conference. If you had a starting lineup of Denzel Aberdeen, of Klobuchar, of Hanlockton, of Hauk, and of Sam Alexis, if that was your starting five, it's a pretty good team, right? I don't know if they'd be number two in the country. I tend to doubt it, but I bet that's a team that's going to make the NCAA tournament. That's your
Yeah,
starting five: Aberdeen, Klobuchar, Hanlockton, Hauk, Sam Alexis. Those are the five bench players for Florida.
I
That
know
is wild to think about, man.
it is. Once you mentioned it a minute ago, once Han Logden decided to come back, it became like, all right, like this is now a complete embarrassment of riches. It was like when some of these guys got in the rotation before that, it was like, man, Florida's deep, and then they get hand locked in back. It's like they're the deepest team in America.
You know what I compare it to? Like the 2000s, the back to backs. They obviously had a ridiculous starting lineup of Horford, Brewer, Green, Noah. All those guys. Lee Humphrey. They had a couple of bench guys, right? Walter Hodge was on one of those teams. Adrian Moss was on one of those teams. Maurice Spates, Will Richard, or Chris Richard. They had guys, but they weren't 8, 9, 10 deep on those teams. I go back to the 2000 team, the team that lost to Michigan State in the national championship game. And on that team, it was wild. You had Donnell Harvey, Matt Bonner, Justin Hamilton, Brent Wright, Teddy Dupay, Brett Nelson, Mike Miller, on and on and on. It was a crazy deep team. This team to me is comparable to that one. Just how many bigs and how many guards. Look, if Walter Clayton's having a rough night shooting, well, you got Elijah Martin, you got Denzel Aberdeen, you got Klobuchar, you got Richard. If Chinaloo gets in foul trouble and Condon gets in foul trouble, well, all you do then is bring in Hanlockton and Hauk off the bench. I mean, it's the the things Florida could do in the next month have got to get Gator fans pretty excited with this depth on this team once Condon comes back.
And the other thing, Hack, that makes me excited about March is you go through and you look at all the teams in the past that have made deep run, not just the Gators, but any team that really makes any type of Final Four or national championship run. Another key that I don't know gets talked about enough because especially in college, everyone kind of has their brand of basketball, right? Auburn's really tough. Auburn likes to play. They play very physical. They play through Janai Broom. Alabama wants to just shoot the lights out of the gym. Tennessee wants to play muddy, tough defense. Like there's multiple ways to win basketball games, right? And you kind of build your team based on that. Florida, and again, I think this is indicative of championship caliber teams. Florida can play any of those brands and beat you. Florida can beat you at your game. Florida can beat you at their game. Florida can beat you when they're not playing well and have to change up the game. And we've seen them win in all these different ways all year. We've seen them win because they're shooting the three ball really well this year. We've seen them win because of defense. We've seen them win because of uh, pounding it inside, scoring in the paint, getting their team in foul trouble. Like we have seen multiple ways for them to win. And in March, especially in the NCAA tournament, you have to have that because you're going to be playing different teams all the time that are going to present different matchups, different things. And Florida can expose different weaknesses, and boy, do they expose them hard.
Today's Gator Bytes podcast is brought to you by Southeast Orthopedic Specialists. For the highest quality care, you can rely on Southeast Orthopedic Specialists for any orthopedic injury or concern. And you can listen to the good doctor, Kevin Murphy, Thursday mornings on The Drill with Dan and Jeff for his weekly analysis of injuries in the world of sports. Again, thank you to Southeast Orthopedic Specialists for their continued support of the Gator Bytes podcast. Graham, having said all that, and we got to go kind of quick here, but having said all that, the win over Auburn, the win over Mississippi State, dominating win over South Carolina, dominating win over Oklahoma. They're due for a clunker. They're due for a stinker. And they got to go to Baton Rouge tomorrow and play one of the worst teams in the SEC. Decent team, but SEC standards, LSU is not very good. I get the feeling that tomorrow is going to be very similar to the South Carolina game. Not playing a very good team, having to go on the road, coming off back-to-back
The
dominating
road
wins at
South Carolina
home.
game.
The road game against South Carolina.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be pretty for Florida tomorrow. I think tomorrow is going to be one of those games where they just got to find a way to have one more point on the scoreboard than LSU. Because at some
But
point, those threes aren't going to fall. They've been falling for the last 4 games. At some point, things are not going to go your way. You're going to have some adversity. I just get the vibe that's going to happen in Baton Rouge tomorrow, and they need to do what they did in Columbia. They just need to find a way, regardless of how they do it. It doesn't need to look the prettiest. Just find a way to get out of there with a W tomorrow.
But they've proven on more than one occasion they can do that. And South Carolina was probably the most classic example because they didn't deserve to win that game, but they figured out how to. But I mean, there's been games all year that have been kind of like that, and they've had to just. And that's another thing I love about this team. Come March, like they're battle tested. They've played in a lot of tight games and come out. They've played a few that came out on the wrong side, like Kentucky and Missouri. But they've played a lot of tight games where they've come out on the correct side as well. So, I don't totally disagree with you. I mean, they're not going to win every game here on out for the rest of the stretch. They're not going to win them all by 20, right? Like there are going to be closer games in there. But I trust this team if they're not playing well to figure out ways to win. I trust this team if the three's not falling to figure it out. I mean, particularly when we talk about how deep they are, I think that's another advantage here. Like, not just the 3 ball, but generally speaking, like, okay, maybe tonight, Denzel Aberdeen and Will Richard and Walter Clayton may not quite have it tonight. It might just not be their night. Okay, well, you can still look at Chinyelu and Thomas Houck and all these other guys, and someone probably does have it. So I think they can just there's so many different games where this can be the Thomas Houck game, this can be the Denzel Aberdeen game, this can be the Walter Clayton game. I think almost every game at this point is the Walter Clayton game. I think he's that good, but generally speaking, with everybody else, I just think they're so deep that you can always count on someone to give you a nice surge to help you win, especially against inferior competition.
Well, and truth be told, I wouldn't mind to have the Gators face some adversity. I wouldn't mind to have them at some point, either tomorrow or against Georgia, not on their home court. I wanted to have it happen on the road, to be down 10, to have the referees kind of working against them, for the whistle not to be
Yeah.
going their way, because that's going to happen in March. And I want to see them face that adversity. Now, like you said, they have done it. But the last couple of weeks, they've looked like the best team in the country, like you said.
Well, I will say counterpoint to that. To be fair, I get what you're saying. It's within the flow of a game, but injuries are adversity.
Yeah, fair. But again, injuries happen, but you don't get a starting center back as an emotional lift that hadn't played in 11 months very often either. I mean, Handlocked and him coming back was a crazy good timing scenario, which kind of offset some of that adversity. What I'm talking about is I want LSU to hit like 5 of their first 8 threes tomorrow, right? I want, a couple of turnovers and the crowd going nuts and Florida bickering a little bit. And I want to see, how they respond to that, because they haven't had to face hard adversity in the flow of a game like they've had. Again, they've just been killing teams in the last couple of weeks.
In the last couple of weeks, yeah, but they have done that this year, though. I think, but you're right. I mean, it's the last couple of weeks they've just been murdering everyone.
It's unreal. Again, 12
But
games.
I mean, look, like the Mississippi State game, like
yes, there was adversity there. Yes, there was. You're right about that.
Your starting center goes down in the first 15 seconds of the game, and they picked up and just murdered Mississippi State on their home court like it was nothing.
And Mississippi State just beat Texas A&M. That's a good Mississippi
I know,
State
like a team
basketball
is
team.
good. So it's crazy, man, with their ability, what they can do, even when they don't have everything they need.
Again, thank you to Southeast Orthopedic Specialists for bringing you this edition of Gator Bytes on the 1010XL.com podcast network. We got about 5 minutes. We got like a podcast platform here. I got to run across
Mhm.
the stage area to go do Duval Rundown here in a moment. Before I do that, the stat I was shocked by today, and I don't know if you've heard this or not. I had Mike DeCourcy, who's the bracketologist for Fox Sports. He's with the Sporting News, covered college basketball for years. 1991, 7 of the 9 Big East teams made the NCAA tournament, which is like 78% of the conference made the NCAA tournament from the Big East in 1991. That's the record, percentage wise, of teams in a conference that make the big dance. The SEC is going to break that this year. If they get 13 out of 16 in, which is all the projections, some bracketologists have 14 out of 16, they're going to break that 78% mark. In translation, what does that mean, Graham? And again, I don't think I'm overstating this. Numbers wise, the SEC this year is going to be the best conference in the history of college basketball if they get 13 out of 16 into the NCAA tournament, which is wild to say, but the numbers back it up.
It's insane. I mean, I said at the beginning of this podcast, I think Florida is the best team in the country, and I genuinely feel like any given night they could lose in this league
Yeah.
to anybody.
Yeah.
And so, some of that is just because college basketball, like, there's a lot of upsets, but most of that is because these are good teams. I mean, if Missouri is in a different conference, they're probably atop the conference.
Right. Missouri's, I mean, no, I think South Carolina is the prime example. South Carolina hasn't won a game in the SEC. South Carolina is a 500 team in almost every other week. I mean, they're right there. They just can't find a way to
Yeah.
win these games in the last 5 minutes. Oklahoma. Oklahoma's on the bubble. Lenardi from ESPN.com had them as like one of the first 4 out last week. Oklahoma's like 3-10 in the SEC, but remember they were 11-0 in the non-conference before conference play started. I mean, it is insane, this league this year.
Yeah, that's wild, man. It's a really, really good league, and the thing too is, like, I don't know that any of these teams are going anywhere after this year. I mean, I know it comes in phases. Not every team's going to be quite with it, but like Todd Golden's not going anywhere in Florida. Bruce Pearl's not going anywhere. Rick Barnes not going anywhere. Nate Oates not going anywhere. Like, it's going to continue to be the premier basketball conference in America.
With that NIL money flowing in. All right, next time we talk will be next week. Florida's on the road twice. Baton Rouge tomorrow against LSU. Athens on Tuesday against Georgia. Do they go 2-0?
Yes,
It's
I
hard to
think they're
win on.
going. Go ahead.
It's hard to win on the road. I think they go 2-0, but I don't think these are the two prettiest games. I think both of these games are nail biters with 5 minutes to go.
We'll revisit it maybe next week when we got a little more time hack. But are you aware of a one Michael White's record against his old Gators?
What is he, like 0-6, 0-7?
0-6.
0-6. That's Todd Golden, man. And I know you and I we didn't get laughed at, but we got kind of eye rolls from people in our building, mind you. In our building.
It's a little victory
about,
lap. It's a little victory lap. I'm just saying.
Yeah, Mike White this and Mike White that. Well, it looks like Marsh and Hacker were right about that one. And trust
Looks
me,
like
I have
Mike
taken
White
many victory
sucks,
laps.
and Florida made the right hire to replace him.
No doubt. No
He just
doubt.
needs more time. He just needs more time.
All right. We'll talk more about that tomorrow. Again, the Gators at LSU and at Georgia on Tuesday. You'll hear both games on 1010XL. He is Graham Marsh. I'm the hacker, Ryan Green. Thank you for watching and listening to Gator Bytes right here on the 1010XL.com podcast network and on the Florida Gator 1010XL Facebook page.